Hello, dear learners. Welcome back to a new course today using the platform, which is Become a Professional in Teaching. So, this is more like a workshop course that will teach new students and learners who would like to be involved in the education field, and for students and professionals as well who would like to work as mentors or they are newly um, facing or encountering that experience of teaching. It's not easy for starters, although that teaching is now, it could be considered as the shortest domain that needs less experience or needs less training to become a good teacher, because teaching is more morally a skill that you learn through your enthusiasm, your research, your communication with students, your aiming to teach and give off your information to other people. But still, it needs workshops, and that's why in so many institutions and in so many schools and educational establishments they ask for teaching certificates, because although that you would like to teach in some domains that you are specialized in, or you have professional experience in the market or through your academic certificates or etc., that's not enough to become a good teacher in that domain or in that specific major that you would like to give off your information to or explain. So teaching needs someone who is well planned or know how to transmit a piece of information. So it's easy to say a fact. Now, if you know that fact, or if you are skilled enough to talk about this fact, this is not just a factor where you can become a teacher. There are so many other factors to consider. You have to analyze the type or the category of student in front of you. So, teaching a piece of information to a toddler is not as explaining it to an infant, and is not the same as explaining it to an adult, and it's not always the same to explaining it to a beginner adult or an advanced adult in that domain. So, you have to consider also the level of the person who is in front of you, whether it's the mental level or whether it's the educational level. We'll be talking about all of these points in that course workshop, and we will also be doing examples and prototypes of how to explain a certain article or how to carry on or how to boost your confidence while explaining, because so many teachers, when they are young enough not to have that experience to explain in front of an audience, and especially when it comes to older adults audience, where these adults have brains, they have critical skills, they know how to think, they might ask sometimes confusing or challenging questions that make so many new or young teachers nervous in in the very first sessions or during a very big public speech in public conferences or in public educational halls. Anyway, we'll be starting from zero. So in that course, I'm not expecting you to be already an intermediate teacher. I'm starting with you as you are newly being involved or you would like to consider yourself in the teaching positions for the upcoming near future. This presentation is going to be so graphically simple, but at the same time, it's going to explain so much. And to avoid the audience boredom, I'll be going through videos as well, and I will be showing you some uh, case studies where we will be explaining text and we'll be showing verbally and visually how to make that text understandable. So what do we have here? We have a simple table of contents, and these are the main three concepts or contexts that we'll be talking about in that course. In topic one, it's about teaching. So we'll be talking a little bit about teaching. What's the definition of teaching? Now, I know that you might say that this is actually a dull question, or who the hell who doesn't know what's teaching? Now, we are not explaining it by the grammar or by vocabulary. We'll be explaining the roles of a teacher. So, teaching normally, as people know, when you are teaching or giving off a piece of information for academic or for applications usages to a different person. But what is the role of a teacher? What is teaching, or how teaching has been exploited over these latest decades that we are through? Number two, it's how to gain expertise. So now we'll be talking about expertise of teaching. Now, as I said, it's not magic to start having a sudden expertise in teaching, although that it's Relatively an easy domain to gain experience in comparing to other domains, but I'll be giving you keywords to prepare and to remember and to start out your teaching career path. This is how you start gaining expertise. Now remember that expertise cannot be gained unless you are put in the real situation. So if you have never taught anyone before, or you haven't done or given courses or lessons to anyone before, then you cannot gain expertise unless you are in that situation. So even though that if you explain something to your neighbor, explain something to your friends, to maybe your family, people around you, this is considered as gaining of or partial gaining of that expertise, because teaching is not necessarily a full-time job where you're carrying your values and you are just walking around with books and giving lectures. No, teaching could be also, as in so many today's lectures online platforms. These platforms give the choice to people to explain one to one, or let's say to particular clients, or go to their houses and just get paid by hour and explain and etc. So it's more like not just a full-time job today, it's more of a freelance job. So, number three, which is the very basic third concept that we'll be talking about, is the practices and the examples. As I said, we as human beings, we do not understand a piece of information and we cannot sympathize with it unless we see that visual example in front of us. That saying, or let's say that visual example, is just a part of our expertise or of our experience. The experience is completed once you are the one who's doing that action, who's under action. So now when you watch me in some part of that course, giving you a workshop and showing you some life examples of how to teach a certain topic successfully, to no matter what's that category of that student, this is part of your expertise or part of your experience. Your experience is going to be accomplished when you are the one now who has a student and applying this. So once you are the one who's doing the action, then you are starting your expertise. Anyway, I'll be trying to approach the maximum to you to be able to understand, or at least put yourself in a teacher's place and start imagining yourself as a teacher. The first thing that we have to start with is that question: what makes a good or a bad teacher? Now, we want to define what's teaching first. If you can define what's teaching exactly and what are the essential roles or tasks of a teacher, you can determine then who is a good and who is a bad teacher. Who's a teacher? A teacher is one who gives off a correct piece of information. This is number one. A teacher is someone who knows how to transmit the piece of information or the info according to the person or referring to the person's level, and they use different ways or different methods or unlimited methods or means to make sure that this information now is correctly understood by the student. Number three, a teacher who always corrects mistakes. It doesn't mean that teachers do not commit mistakes. No, as long, even if you're an adult with an PhD degree or an adult who has been in the expertise for over 15 or 20 years, you can still have mistakes, but these mistakes are not huge mistakes. They could be, let's say, small errors or maybe some way of thinking that has to be updated. But how are you going to be a good teacher when you can update yourself and you can correct yourself and then you can correct the students' mistakes? Because someone who's younger than you and who's with less experience, that's normal that they are not going to think with the same wild thinking that you have, not the same strategies, not the same mechanism, not the same maturity of thinking. All of this is missing for for the young person or an adult who's a beginner in that domain, and this young adult or that young person is being your student. So these are three main roles. A fourth role, which is the very important one, a teacher, and just focus on this if you want to be a really good teacher, because I have seen so many teachers in my life and they could be also my colleagues, but I swear that I can't consider them good teachers. Although that they have expertise, they're not good teachers. To be a good teacher, and always remember, Have you ever remembered in one of your school years or high school or college year whatsoever, students always thanking one specific teacher? Now, not talking bad about other teachers, but thanking one specific teacher, always mentioning how grateful they are to him for the way he explains, for the way he helps, for the way he contributes. This is step number four or factor number four that makes you a good teacher. And this is another definition of teaching. A teacher is one who has that compassion and is aiming honestly and sincerely with transparency to ease up people's life. How do you ease up people's life? A good teacher is not just the one who throws a piece of information and then leaves. Even though this piece of information is correct, you want to make sure that the person in front of you will be able to apply that piece of information in their life to make their life easier, or to make them more trained, or to open more career paths to them, or to give them tips to make this piece of information usable in their real life application. This is a good teacher. That's why I say teaching is attached to compassion and morality. So, if you want to be a good teacher, it's not enough to have an expertise in your domain and start giving of information. You have to have compassion, morality, and you have to have a well communication sense with the person in front of you. You have to determine and sympathize with their case. So, for example, they are a teenager, you know that their mental level or cognitive level is not matching yours in any ways. Or if it's a young adult who is new to that domain, you know that they are starting up from zero, so they have no hell idea about what they are talking about. So, what makes a good or bad teacher? Let's refer back to the points here and then re explain or discuss. One answer here: a good teacher is one who uses different interactive ways to transmit information. As I said, you have to use all your weapons to make sure that the piece of information is understood or the course is understood, no matter what method is used. If you are using visual methods, internet, animation, textbooks, explanation, even if you are doing a small theater in front of your students just to make it look more like chili or more spicy and make the students more focused with you and make them imagine the situation, it's still a teaching method. So always the efficient teaching methods do not have a certain title or they do not have a certain way, because I said it's teaching. So even life teaches you. Life, as this very famous proverb, is a good teacher. So does life teach you with only one way? No, it teaches you with so many different situations, with so many different methods and mediums. For example, a kid can learn a lesson. Maybe sometimes if this is a quick devil kid who is not just listening to their parents or not polite, they do not learn unless they get in trouble. This is a way of teaching, but I'm not telling you to follow this. Another way of teaching how life teaches you is maybe if you see examples of people, another people in front of you, or maybe if you undergo the situation yourself, or maybe if someone who's older than you telling you not to do it because it's dangerous, or maybe life teaches you with more experience. So this is so many ways, unlimited ways of teaching. So a good teacher knows that there are unlimited ways to transmit a piece of information correctly to your student's brain. So even if it costs you to create your own ways, this makes you a great teacher. Let's go to the second point. Another trait of a good teacher. A good teacher is one who puts a strategy plan for teaching every category of students. As an example, teaching strategy for kids, different from teenagers and different from adults, different from mature adults. So, what makes it a good teacher? Now, it's easy if you're discussing your expertise to someone else under the name of teaching. But if you would like really to be a good teacher, you have to set up a teaching plan. Uh, and it means teaching plan is not necessarily a huge teaching plan. I'm not asking you to establish a report or an essay where you'll be planning where to put the word one by one, or what do you have to do exactly in each minute. No, no, no. A good teaching plan is, for example, first thing you study the student's case. That student, for example, is a teenager, so they have a different cognitive level, they have a different life phase, they have a different way of thinking. They are so active, they are so enthusiastic, they are so excited sometimes. Sometimes they find the way you're explaining is difficult, sometimes not. Even though they understand what you are talking about, they might understand it in a different way due to the difference of age and experience levels. And this is how the human being brain is designed. So you have to set up a strategy plan according to the student level and circumstances. You also have to set up a strategy plan on how this difficult or complicated piece of information that you'll be explaining will be absorbable to the student's brain first. What could you do first? Are you going to explain it with a simple storytelling, or you will give him a storytelling, or are you just going to show him some maybe simple visual animations to make them imagine the situation first and then discuss it more deeply with them? Are you going to start off by, let's say, another means or another methods? How are you going gradually from the very simple basic concept of that course or that article to more complicated points in that course on that article? So you have to set up a gradual strategic plan. So this is a good teacher who plans how to give off their lectures each time. Let's go to the third one. A good teacher is one who realizes that teaching is not just giving information, but learning from your students also is a different way of thinking or approaching life. So this is very important one. Learning from your students. Now, some people, some teachers, especially who are adult enough or old enough in age, are going to tell me what an 18 or 17 years old person is going to teach me as an expert and mature adult who has been in the expertise of life and in that domain for over 20 years. Now, there is something that you don't know. Although that person is younger than you, so much younger, maybe 20 years or 15 years or 10 years younger than you, because every single person on the earth has a different approach of understanding and information. Maybe the way that this young student is thinking about will open up to you other wonderings to you. You will be wondering, okay, oh, why didn't I approach that subject this way when I was younger? So this will make you start wondering. And even though if you're an older adult and you start wondering, this will help what improve your teaching methods, improve your way of thinking, open up to you other creative ways, and enhance your research and enhance your understanding of that topic. Although that you're an expert in that topic, remember that teaching never ends up. So while you are teaching the principles to a younger student, you are still learning the more complicated principles of that subject or that topic. This is how a good teacher thinks about. So just remove that ego apart. Remember that science or teaching will always have to make you avoid being biased. So you have to stop feeling superior or stop feeling favoritism or just not make your ego big enough just to make you think that if that person's younger than you, so they are teaching you nothing. As an example, importance of discussion and debates in classes. These debates give more vision, comprehension, and creative thinking. So a good teacher knows how to learn from that student, give them and learn. So this is actually happens when there is a good debate during the lecture. Okay, so this is regarding the third step. Let's go to the fourth one. A good teacher is one who knows and appreciates the level of comprehension of each student. Go slowly and one by one, even if the student learner told you they understand it their own. So, let me just give you an example. I was teaching a student a while ago why the change of state of matter in chemistry, for example, from solid to liquid, from liquid to gas, or from liquid to solid, is just a physical property and is not a chemical property. I told them that's because imagine that you're boiling water. You're boiling water, so what's happening? Some of the water molecules are rising up due to their gain of that kinetic energy from heat. They will rise up and they will start running in fast speeds in the air, causing steam or water, steam or gas. So they will be just running around freely in the air as water, steam, or water vapor. So he said, okay, I still do not understand why it's physical, not chemical. So I explained it in another way. I said, because if you evaporate water, when water is turning into gas, is it changing? It's still water, it's still H2O. So that student was, oh, okay, now I understand better. They haven't fully understood what I mean. That the change of temperature changes the state of matter, but doesn't change the chemical composition. H2O remains H2O, whether it's an ice cube, water liquid, or water steam. So they asked me another question based on that. And one by one, finally, at the end of the session, they understood completely what I was talking about. Why? Because I wanted to make sure that they understand the information as exactly as it is, even though that it's not a non 100% guarantee, because as I said, the age gap and the experience varies, but you have to sympathize and you have to know that this person is still fresh in life, they're still fresh in that domain. So even though the clear or the very clear information that you give off and they could be illusion that they have understood it, it's not completely the level of understanding you will be expecting, and this is normal. So your job here is to make everything clearer and more correct to students. Okay, so here we have the moment code. So we have now to talk about the very basic and very important tips and principles for a teacher to follow or a new teacher on how to avoid mistakes during teaching. And so now we have mentioned the good teacher. What is a bad teacher? A bad teacher is anything except these points. A bad teacher is one who doesn't have teaching plan, one who doesn't sympathize with the student's level, one who doesn't use creative ways or different methods to explain or to make sure that the information is understood. A bad teacher is one who doesn't do this with compassion and with morality, but do this for money. All of the uh, points that are completely the opposite of the 4 points we mentioned are descriptions of a bad teacher. So let's go here and talk about the expertise a little bit. So we'll be talking about the very basic steps on how to gain expertise quickly. Number one, as I said, you have to start teaching to gain expertise and not necessarily start teaching professionally as a full-time job in front of 30 or 40 students in a huge lecture hall. No, not necessarily. As I said, you can start with small groups, which is number one. You can start with teaching your neighbors, family members, maybe your friends, maybe your colleagues, etc. This is the very main and first important key to start gaining experience or expertise in teaching and mentoring. Number two, start practice talking and speech. Now, this is very important for introverts and people who are extremely nervous of talking in front of audience. I have known colleagues of mine who were really doing quite well alone. But when it reached that moment where they had to present their project or their essay in front of teachers or a jury or an audience, they seemed like fools. Not because they are fools, but because they were not well trained on communication methods to explain and represent their project in a way that can make the person in front of them understand their basic points or understand where or why they have designed such projects. So the communication is so important. So you have to start practice talking and speech. Okay, so how are you starting practicing talking and speech? Now we will be talking about this in upcoming chapter and upcoming slides and explaining how to practice your speech. So simple. You can start practicing with yourself. Just sit up in front of a mirror and just yourself talking in front of that mirror. And what are the flaws or the points that you don't like in yourself when you start talking? Is it you start stuttering a lot, or that you talk slowly, or you talk too fast? Or is it that you repeat the words few times, or you don't prepare, or you just get a little bit silent sometimes? All of these points you can just practice with yourself and write down or note down what are the flows that happen to you when you start speaking public or when you start speaking in front of the mirror. What are the things that you think are embarrassing to you? Although that this is nothing embarrassing, there are so many people who do not have enough speech practice or communication practice. That's totally okay. That can come with more practice with yourself. You can also start talking if you have some confidence circle in your life, like some close friends or your family members, and you would like them to contribute in. Just put them in under situation and start explaining to them or giving them a speech without looking to the paper. Now remember, if you want to become a good teacher, stop reading from papers. Don't get that habit to read from papers because I have just noticed that as I said, the worst colleagues ever of mine who were just seeming like fools in public presentations were ones who were reading from slides. Not because they wanted to read from slides, no, that's because they were too nervous. And this habit during the presentation has revealed that they had the habit before to keep reading without explaining themselves or without not looking into books or textbooks. So they used to read without explaining. So they depended like 90% or 80% on reading. So this is not a good habit. You have to make sure that there's another creative way where you can practice speech. You can just train your vocabulary. You can go. Now we have wide internet tools. We have wide research tools. You can just go through Googling or whatever research engine, write down teaching words or explanation words. All the teaching words can pop up to you that you can use during your speech just to seem more professional and to have more self confidence. For example, teachers use when they are explaining a text, therefore a lot. So you're explaining something, you say therefore, therefore, therefore. Now, step number three, design presentations. Why do you have to design presentations? Now, it's not necessarily, it depends on the curriculum and your job situation. Some teachers do not have to design presentations. They have the curriculum ready in a certain school or establishment, and they just have to go and explain through the textbook or explain through videos or whatsoever content is there. But why designing presentation is so efficient? Because it makes you well plan your lecture better than the already curriculum, and it makes you more creative and it gives you experience in terms of how to afford or how to provide your explanation in visual methods. This is so demandable today and so useful because a human being's brain is designed to understand more the visual part more than the verbal part. So if you design presentations, this is going to contribute a lot in making you a great teacher. Number four, practice on explaining basic concepts. As I said, just get rid of the habit of keep reading text. Okay, so stop reading texts. Now, if you're afraid of explaining verbally a text that you have just read and you are afraid that you'll seem like a fool or you'll be stuttering all the time, you can do the following. And I have done this so many times before I gained expertise in teaching. As I said, you can take off or take a certain text where you have fully understood, rewrite it with your other way, and rewrite it with another way. Forget it. Just imagine yourself a student and who's avoiding plagiarism. So you have to rewrite the text your own, how you have understood that text, because the way you are going to rewrite that text will show yourself or will reflect on yourself how much have you understood that topic or that text. So when you rewrite it your own way, this reflects at you as well the way or the percentage of understanding to yourself. That percentage of understanding will ease up to you the way you explain it to another people. So practice on explaining basic concepts this way. You can practice, as I said, in front of a mirror, or just use someone who's more like a trusted circle. You can just talk to your friend, your family, just take the role in front of them and ask them whether they have understood, and make sure that you're explaining to them something they haven't been through before, a piece of information of a major they haven't been through before, because the expertise or the wellness of a teacher appears in the situation where you are explaining a completely different concept, where the person in front of you doesn't have any clue about. Number five, work on showing examples and prototypes. Now, part of it is designing presentations. That's a good visual part for you and for your student. But why do you have to work on showing examples and prototypes? Because, as I said, the explanation means are unlimited. And the more you add means and examples of different ways, the more you are being creative in teaching, the more you will be self confidence and less enclosed in your teaching methods. You can just explain showing 3D examples, maybe 3D models, physical models, animation, videos, maybe you can use it with doing, as I said, as a storytelling as well, or as a theater, or maybe more ways of making people do virtual visits on that place where it's the usage of that course or that topic in real life application. So you always have to show examples. Just and also examples ease up the explanation way to you. If you're showing up examples, this is going to give you more breadth during the lecture and will reinforce the way you explain things, because if plan A didn't run up quite well or didn't take place quite well, plan A, which means that you explained verbally a few times and the person in front of you still doesn't perceive the idea, as an obligation, they will be able to perceive it when they see examples, prototypes, and real life examples in front of us, in front of them. So here are the very important tips that you have to follow up to become a good teacher. And these tips, as simple as they seem, they will ease up everything to you. Tip number one, always give examples, which is the last thing that we have talked about in the previous slide. Tip number two, ask them what they think. Ask the student what do they think. I said personal debate, not personal debate, I mean personal issues. No, a debate that goes or carries on between the student and teacher is so important, and it's a conversation related to the topic you're explaining. Even though you think that they still have no clue about the idea, they still might, if you ask them, for example, what do you think or what do you know about that topic? What clue do you have about that topic? Then the student will start wondering, they will start thinking. So their brain engine will start working, and they can come up with the brainstorming words that can open up to them more ways of understanding that topic, and can also teach you as a teacher thinking in a different way and understanding more the way they think. So you have to ask them what they think about that topic during this lecture. Three, don't be negative about their mistake. Everyone commits mistake. If the student has committed mistakes regarding a conception of that topic, they have understood it wrongly, this is not the end of the world. You can recorrect it. So don't be negative about it, because negative attitude gives the student less confidence in them and in you as well. And it also makes them more confused, and it might make them feel like they are disabled to understand that topic. So don't be negative about it. I know that it's frustrating so many times for so many teachers when they are explaining a piece of information again and again, again and again. And then you ask the student at the end of the session or the lecture, and they give off the concept again in the wrong way. Yes, it's frustrating, but it's not the end of the world. That's how most of us has or have started understanding a certain major or expertise. So you can keep recorrecting. Three, explain like a story. As I said, storytelling is so important, because a storytelling way can attract the audience or can attract the students' attention more. They can make them imagine the situation better, and it can make the session more fun. 5. Put a gradual explanation plan. As I said, the explanation plans or the lecture plans is so important. They do not just tell you, or they do not just make the lecture more organized. They can also help you as a teacher to construct the ideas or construct the lecture quite well in your head, where you can control or have a gesture of timing. You can control the investment as well in your explanation. So that plan is going to invest your explanation as well in better ways. Number 6, don't get nervous when they won't judge you. Well, so many teachers are nervous because of some quality or type of students they have taught before. Students who were a little bit impolite or mean or not disciplined or so, or students who debate the teachers or make them just doubt their expertise. No, just don't think about it that way. The student who has paid money and attended that institution or that establishment and gave you enough confidence to dedicate their time in your lecture is not going to judge you. And I promise you that it's not that I haven't done mistakes in my whole life in my teaching careers. No, I have done mistakes, but the students, because they had confidence in me as an older adult, and because they have seen that a student is not a stupid person, students can be really smart at so many times. They can just spot out, or as I told you, they can feel how compassionate is that teacher, how that teacher is willing to ease up their life or ease up their understanding. So even though if you commit mistakes, students are not going to count it for you because they can feel a compassionate and a dedicated teacher. Okay, so the next session or the next video will be talking more about ways or very important keys that you have to keep in your lecture, and we will be explaining as well how to do a research as a teacher that will contribute in teaching you more about your topic, teaching the student how to do their own research as well, and gain their information resource correctly. We'll be talking about this next session, so see you next session.